Hey everybody, I have a new series here I like to call Boardroom Breakdown. So this means we're going to the board and I'm using this so you guys have a nice reference. So I highly recommend, just to set this up well for you to be effective, is to take some notes. You can screenshot some of this. You can ideally have this list that you can reflect on, and ideally reflect on this weekly, going through this. This would be a high level skill, high level place. And I will give you guys a hint. If you have a coach that you know and trust, believe in, that's going to be your best place to reside. Second best option would be at least an accountability partner, or I like to call a super friend, like a training partner, somebody that's really there for you and going to hold you accountable, going to really be there. And then usually it helps if you're both working on the same general wavelength kind of thing. So keep that in mind. The idea here is that we want to be effective with this. This is coming from a place, this could be very much used for any kind of life behavior change or habit change. You're trying to look at, okay, what are the goal? What is the objective? But what really is the behavior? What is we're gonna talk about systems, creating a system that's gonna work for us. And we're going to do some other things with this. This is just our starting point in this first video of this series of what's going to be something. Again, we can basically call our BS, call ourselves out on what's important here, and really look into these things and hopefully realize. And some people, ultimately what this came from is looking at my own training, people I've worked with, and seeing the theme in the Scottish Highland Games of people not making progress on specific events, and sometimes just globally. Sometimes the more general the goal is, the harder it is to measure, harder it is to improve on. If we're doing general things towards general goals, how do we even know where we're going with it? Rather than getting very specific, and I'll give you that hint too, what's coming up here is looking at a more advanced athlete getting very specific, and like where I'm at, and some other higher level Scottish Highland Games athletes. How specific can we make it? How much can we make it measurable? Or we talk about SMART goals, which are specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-oriented. So you can always use that as your base filter there too. And I'll put this, maybe down at the bottom or something so you guys can remember that as well. So starting with that, does it fit in that? Does it hold weight to that? And really our first one here, asking the right question. So starting with good questions in mind, our first question I think we should ask, again, the theme of being an off season for Highland Games. It could be something, I've got more into archery in the last, 4 years, and breaking down my shot process. It's the same idea, same principle here. That will apply across the board here. I need to ask myself those same things. And that's just simply, and a lot of this is going to seem very common sense, but again, I've seen so many people miss the mark or not know basically what they're aiming at. If we have an archery target up here, literally or figuratively, do we know where the center of that bullseye is, and are we grouping? Are we hitting that bullseye, or are we consistent? Or maybe we don't even know, we're over here on the edge of the circle and we're not we're hitting it consistently, so we're like consistently inconsistent with that too, versus spraying arrows all over the place. And that's what a lot of people do with their training. What I found, they fail to keep the system in mind and cycle through that, have that accountability, and that's where that coach comes in to help redirect that. Or oftentimes, a lot of guys go back to, and gals too, well, I need to put more time in the gym. I need to train harder. And oftentimes I think that is the worst choice, especially for an aging athlete. I don't think it's in the gym. I don't think it's harder. It's definitely a smarter, more detail. And again, starting here we have what worked, as simple as that. What worked for you in the past? Can you measurably say, hey, I changed this? Usually it's not just one lift or one thing, and give you that hint, but what did you do? And oftentimes it's something pretty specific. It could be, again, Highland Games or something very detail oriented. You shot more video. Maybe you weren't shooting a lot of videos before. Again, give you that hint. You're going to want to be very detail oriented with this, especially the more specific we can get into individual events and that too. So it didn't work. So simple thing there could be you got injured. You know, you put more time in the gym, you raised your deadlift to 700 pounds and your weight over bar didn't go up. So yeah, you thought that was going to work. It didn't. I'll give you, again, that generally doesn't, to a point. Yeah, getting stronger is a great thing, but that's one factor. Did you get more athletic? Did you get more mobile? Did you stay healthier? What worked? Have the ED in there. Did I stay healthier this year, the whole season? Did I throw in, maybe I did too many games. Maybe I competed too much. Maybe, I just had the wrong focus, the wrong cues. I was getting into the details of the finish of my weight for distance, or just trying to go faster when my angles weren't set up very well. Whatever that may be. So that's really spending time on this, meaning at least sitting quiet in a quiet room kind of thing, getting in the right mode. Especially if you don't have a coach, you really need to sit on this for quite a bit. Ruminate on this, really flesh this out. Be as honest as you can, be as realistic as you can. What really worked, or didn't work, or you just don't know. You don't know, hey, magically I threw my hammer 10 more feet. Was that a consistent thing? Did you raise your average? I look at that a lot too. Did your average throw go up? Your average of all of your hammers. If you threw a light hammer, you had 5 games where you threw 90 feet and 5 games where you threw 110 feet, something extreme like that. And before your average was 100, well, guess what? You're still averaging 100. You're on an average day, you're going to throw a 100-foot throw. Again, that's an extreme example, but did you actually move the needle on? I really like to look at the average really first. And of course the PR, everybody likes the PRs, everybody likes the big throws, but was that a fluky throw that's not repeatable? Can you repeat that? Looking at this very systematically, very intelligently, and not getting all worked up into the emotion and the hype and things like that too. So really spending time on that and breaking down what didn't work, of course. The next one is just, simple concept is belief. We could say discipline. We could put motivation, willing. Are you really willing? I think that's actually probably the best one to have on there. I have that whole list. To look at that, are we willing to do the work? Are we willing to eat some humble pie? I often hear that too, and when I break things down into these simplistic things, or even telling throwers right now, that's literally what I'm going through with a few different people that I work with, is saying, no, we're not going to do any specific throwing. We're not going to touch the actual Highland Games implements until the end of the year. Right now it's November off season here, so we're not even going to touch the implements, especially if we don't have a competition until May, June, something like that, which is our season more here in the Pacific Northwest. Are we willing to step back? Are we willing to do something different? Figure out, what didn't work. Are we willing to do something different to get that result? And generally, what I find, or what I like to see, is that 80% of the things worked. I'm going to keep about 80% of that. So we're just asking for 20% where we're adjusting some things. We're maybe working, everybody has some weak links to work on this time of year. All that. Do we have that willingness? Do we have a belief that it's going to make a difference? And that's where, again, the coach, you got to believe in the coach. You got to have enough of that discipline. And that discipline is just saying, I'm going to show up and do this because it's the right thing to do. It's just we can never go wrong by putting in that quality work. I'm going to default to what is the primary goal, primary objective, and which, even as simple as that, we'll get into this here in a second too, of as detailed as we can of one thing, one area that we can get very honed in on. And that would be, like, for me, is weight for distance. I'm determined to bring up my weight for distance, my heavy and lightweight. So it's 2 events out of 9 basically in there, but I want to move the needle most on that. And that's definitely a more advanced person. It could be somebody kind of an advanced beginner though too, that is really struggling with 1 or 2 events. It's very easy, and I did this too, to work on the events that we enjoy doing, which is oftentimes the height event. The one that kills me is the sheath, especially. People spend so much time and energy working on the sheath. It's one event, and it may not be that, depending on where technique is and things, it may not be as trainable or as points oriented, something that's going to help you finish higher, boost your overall average of your throws, of your scores. So looking at this too, what's realistic? What are the constraints? Meaning, it could be a life, maybe your wife is pregnant or you're pregnant. Well, you're gonna have some different things going on. You're gonna have a new baby in your life. You're gonna have these things. You're gonna, maybe you're getting married. Other big life events that you can see on the horizon well ahead of time. It's a lot easier to have that awareness, that forethought now, rather than, oh wait, I do have, I'm changing jobs and I'm gonna be traveling a lot more. Then you can start to plan. You can have this forethought plan to put in place for those areas. Maybe you just don't have the throw. Maybe this year you had to drive 20 minutes to your throwing field every time you went out there. Can you make a throwing field on your own yard, your own property? Can you do something to make things even easier to be accessible that will just boost that discipline, that will work, be easier to work with? It'll be something that worked rather than, hey, that didn't work. Lean into those constraints, those things that are more challenging, more of those limitations there. So that will really help there. And then we talked about this a little bit too. Awareness. Recognition. I can spell on the board. So again, leaning into this humble willingness, all this goes back and forth too. Can we recognize, and again, talking the big picture of the coach or the super friend, if you don't have that, you better be super disciplined. You better be super willing. You better have a really big belief in that. I know my belief can go up and down a little bit too. And oftentimes, again, that coach, that super friend can help say, hey, chill out. This is going to take a little bit longer to get there. And coaches will do a very good job if they're a solid coach at saying, hey, this should take about 3 months to get there. It's or 1 month or whatever. Hey, we can improve this and start making a difference and seeing this change today. Sometimes there's those answers. Sometimes we may not see it till the end of the season even. So can we trust this process of getting there? Can we have that awareness? Do we, awareness would also fall into with like shooting video. Can we even recognize, hey, is there a technical issue? Do I need to get stronger? Do I need to get more mobile? Do I have something else going on there that fits into that? Can we filter that through? So keep that in mind. Got to have that awareness. And with this, are you healthy? We could say, healthy as in injury-wise. Did we get injured, like I talked about on the field? Is there a high-risk lift that you have in there? Could be going through, our whole health profile. I won't go into that too much. I have a background in public health myself. But do we, have you had some health screens? Have you had your labs done? Have you had your blood pressure checked? Are we at too heavy of a body weight for our overall health? Are we letting our performance go over the top of our health? The only time I think that's potentially worth doing for a short period of time would be for somebody pushing into the professional ranks. Again, say in the Highland Games or any sport or activity, very high level. You're willing to to push into that or push, kind of go all the way, get the glory, the Olympian kind of mindset, versus maybe in a very small compartment for an average Highland Games participant, average athlete. And or especially as we get older, we want to keep that question, am I healthy doing this? Am I, again, healthy body weight? How does my body feel? Am I grinding away? I've done that too many times too, grinding away in the gym in season and having one of my biggest injuries more recently is the same year of trying to do a strongman competition or same early season kind of stuff. I did a strongman competition. I was doing a ton of stone lifting. Guess what? I had a knee. My knee, thankfully, wasn't a major issue. Had a knee issue. I had a high hamstring, mild tear or a moderate tear, and then I just was very stiff on the field. I wasn't as athletic. I wasn't as springy. I wasn't doing as much of the other stuff. When we spend our time and energy on one area and talking about the constraints, it could be just a simple time constraint or a willingness to put in the time. Do we have that? Are we willing to do that for that outcome too? Next one we have, and actually back to the awareness, or this fits in. I'll stick with how I had it here. Can I fix it? So again, it's as detailed as, hey, my arms on my hammer release, I'm short arming it, I'm dumping my hammer. Do I have that awareness that here's the problem, and that awareness of, am I working towards it? Am I able to fix that issue? Could I, fix some other mobility issue? Do I need to enlist a physical therapist? Again, same with the healthy stuff. Do I need to bring in another team member? Do I need some help with that? There's no issue with that. That's a pride thing. And often, I'll give you that hint too. I have a team around me with, a PT that I can, or sometimes two different PTs, an expert in any area that I need some help in, chiropractic, other medical professionals around me to do this, because this is a high risk, this is a high demand activity, and I want to keep pushing on that performance, but asking myself to find kind of that balance too. So asking yourself that, can I or do I know how to fix that, whatever that issue might be? So think about that. What worked? Can I fix it? Didn't work? Can I fix it? It all filters back through. And this one's also a willingness thing. I like to, again, especially with a more advanced athlete, and having areas where your weak links are, especially, to look at the one thing. So, what is the one? Could be, again, one thing at a time. Maybe you were able to get to that hammer goal, for example, earlier in the season, and then sustain it. Cool. You can build up on another event, put a little bit more time and energy into this. Again, especially if you've been throwing for a few years, I really encourage you to consider that. And the Masters thrower especially hits the nail on the head. If you're a younger athlete, you're super athletic, you're super good recovery, you don't need to just narrow it to one thing, but being willing to narrow it down, again, that fits that SMART acronym. That's very specific. The more you can hone in on a specific thing and work towards that, and like that bullseye, you know what the bullseye is. You know if you hit that because you did set that goal. And you had, again, let's talk more about the systems around that. There's actually a good book called The One Thing, by the way, too, that I recommend. Forget the author's name. I highly recommend reading that. And also, along with this and these questions, I like the book, Atomic Habits, it's called. Atomic Habits really looks at the systems here rather than just, hey, I got these goals. I want to add 10 feet to my hammer. Well, how are you going to do it? What questions are you asking? Who's there to help you? All these, same thing. These questions that we need to ask rather than I'm just going to train hard or I'm just going to figure it out as I go. That's not going to be as effective. The path is very difficult. We don't know where the center of that target usually is. Some people that are very gifted and young and healthy and already have had a lot of coaching, already had been throwers, whatever it may be, any other life skill, they end up getting there because they're just so talented, because they're so determined. All those things end up, their belief is high, their discipline's high, and they're willing. And then they have that awareness and enough constraints so that just falls into place. So we're kind of taking that and distilling it down, taking that out. Well, what are they doing, or reverse engineering, we could call it, and breaking through into what this is too. Again, kind of last one, and I've been talking about this throughout, that will solidify this, I'm going to say, is do you have a coach? Or again, super friend, somebody that's really, that you know will help hold you accountable to ask these questions, really be able to help distill out what worked, what didn't work, and be doing that on a micro level, day to day, minute by minute even, and then definitely weekly. Again, I've said that many times, but I hope, take notes and make sure you have this list in front of you. Put it on your board here too. Am I filtering through this every week and looking at this, reassessing, process improvement kind of stuff here too. That coach is going to help a lot with that awareness, that recognition. Make sure you're being honest with yourself and being healthy. If we have an injury, we have a health problem, we have a bigger issue. If we have high blood pressure, I would, highly recommend getting that, at least, to a certain extent, addressing that before you go push on another bulking cycle, on another heavy training block. Get your health in line first. Be straightforward with that. I don't want to be the total evangelical health Nazi preacher with that, but that's really, big picture wise, more important than adding 10 feet, 5 feet, whatever to your hammer. In the moment, it's you're all in on that. I get that. I have that same mentality, but when we can cycle back and be, less emotion based and more big picture awareness and strategic with this. We're being very systematic, strategic with how this goes. And again, that coach is just going to help you bring all these things, help keep the goal. The goal is this one thing. Come back to this area as detailed as you can and willing to make it. And can work into that from, I want to put more effort. I need to get out. I've only been throwing, 1 day a week on the field. I'm not doing the specificity side of things. I'm simply getting out to the field and doing quality work, believing what you're doing, staying disciplined, staying open-minded, and starting to train 3 days a week, say, into the later preseason at least, and definitely in season. I highly recommend at least pushing past like the 50-50 mark for most people, especially if you're already strong and already athletic. The time on the field is going to make the biggest difference. Just, again, for examples within this too. So again, this is just part one of this series. Take these notes down with the questions, continue asking yourself these questions, and then they'll show you some other ways to kind of break things down and have some other tools to use, at any given moment throughout your season and throughout your life goals and journeys and putting these systems in place. So hope that helps, guys.